Welcome back to Jennifer Broussard Art. I'd like to introduce a new series of the year of 2026, Penguin of the Month, a series inspired by last year's Duck of the Month. Like last year, I will focus on beginner mixing and watercolor techniques. There will be a new penguin painting each month, and with all paintings completed at the end of October, so you have time to have your paintings printed as a calendar. So for our first one, January, our penguin is sliding into 2026 on its belly. I think penguins are the funniest, cutest birds ever, so let's stop talking and start painting. My supplies today and for the whole series, I'm going to be using Fabriano Artistico cold press block 100% cotton in size 5 by 7 inches or 12.5 by 18 centimeters. I have the penguin already drawn and ready to be painted. I'm going to use a black pen, maybe some Bleedproof white at the end for some snow, and my 3 mixing colors by DaVinci, Red Rose Deep, Arylide Yellow FGL, and Phthalo Blue, and it is pigment 15, PB 15. And I'm going to be using these 4 brushes, Princeton Heritage, round 8 and round 4, and then a silver white round 2 and around 0. I'm going to zoom in first thing to the eye. I'm just going to do it with a marker. So this year in 2026, I'm going to be sticking to these 3 colors for the entire series. I won't be going back and forth between M. Graham and this like I did last year. If you have a favorite mixing set with a cool and some warms, it's a split primary, and you use your favorite mixing set or go and get these from DaVinci. They're very economical, and yet they're absolutely beautiful and highly pigmented. I really love these, this brand of paints. So I'm going to just now make a horizon line right about 1, 2, 3. So we want to divide the edge of the paper into thirds. And on the first third, the first top third, I'm going to make a horizon line. And if you want to, you can get out a ruler and mark it, and so that you can make it straight. I'm going to do a little bit of a sunset. I'm going to wet the top. And at first I'm going to put in some blue. This could also be a sunrise. Get a little bit of the blue. So I have a wet brush, and I'm making a light value of the phthalo blue into just a little puddle. And I'm thinking about how I already have water on the paper, and now there's water in the paint, so it's going to be pretty light. And my paintbrush is also watery. So I'm going to just place that in here in kind of like stripes. And now I'm going to get a puddle of the Red Rose Deep, and I'm going to add that in there. And some of this will stay pink, and some of it will turn purple, and some of it will stay blue. I'm going to put a little more blue up in the corner, get a little more dark color so it's a little bit vignetted, so that our eye goes like this. Put a little of that purple through the pink and just dance around across the page. And I'm going to let that dry. If you don't have one, I would recommend getting some kind of a dryer that's made for watercolors. It's not exactly made for watercolors, but I want you to look at the watts. It's only 350 watts. You don't want to get one of those professional heat guns for electricians. It's way, way, way too hot. So I have this one. When I was in the US, I had one called Craft Tool, and that one was 400 watts. So once your watercolor has been sitting for a few minutes and it's been able to mix a little bit on the paper, you can finish it off with a dryer, which is what I'm about to do. Okay, it's all dry, and I want to make the sky a little more vibrant, so now I'm going to do my second layer. I'm going to get a bigger petal of the Red Rose Deep, a little more saturated with pigment, and a little bit more of the phthalo blue. And this time I'm going to just go on dry paper. I'm going to go right over the top and get my brush wet and spread it around. I love to glaze. This is called glazing, when you're going over dry paper with another transparent layer, and then the colors blend together. You can see one color through the new color, and it makes it have more depth. I'm going to let those touch. Get a little more of the blue and go right over this pink. Don't worry if your lines don't quite match up. See how mine, you can see some pink right there? That's okay. There's always a fix. Now I want it a little darker up here. And I'm going to let that dry. All right, that's all dry, and now I'm going to paint the snow all around the penguin. I'm going to make a gray by making orange first. So I'm dipping right into that fresh paint and getting a good glob of it. I'm going to put it over here between yellow and red. I'm going to get a little more because I want to make a lot. Rinse it out and then get some yellow and mix it in. So that turned that red rose deep, which is really a pink, into a red. Now I'm going to get a little bit of the blue, not a lot, because you want to start off slow and add it to the red, and that turned it maroon. Okay, rinse. And I'm getting the extra water out of my brush, getting a little bit more blue. That turned it a little bit more purple. Get a little more. Now we have a true purple, which would be nice for the snow. I'm going to add a little more blue. And now we have sort of a gray blue, and I'm going to use that for the snow. And for that, I'm going to wet right up to the horizon line all of the area around the penguin. And if you go over the line for the penguin's back, it's okay because that back is going to be gray. Now I want to show shadows in the snow. Penguins have been sliding around on this all day playing, and I want to show the trajectory. So now I'm going to randomly place some of this color all around. And if you look at your painting, you're going to see some separation. There's a little bit of pink separating out from this purple. And that is what I absolutely love about mixing. So my paper dried a little bit there, or maybe I never got it wet, I'm not sure. And that's okay too. Now down here I want to make it a little darker. I'm going to add a little more blue. And here's where you can tease in some other colors for interesting shadows. So this is the part of the body that is actually touching the ground. He's not touching the ground on the other side of his body, so there's no shadow above. And then this is not touching the ground either. It's sticking up above the ground. So I'm not putting a shadow there. I'm only putting a shadow under the belly, which is this blue. I'm going to add a little bit more right around the beak and above the beak. This is where it can get, you want to be careful with your lines because it can get, it can dry hard, and then you have to soften it. So if you can avoid that in the first place, that's great. Now I'm going to take just some clear water and move some of this around. Put a little bit more up here. Okay. I want to soften this. Now I rinsed my brush out and I wiped off all of the water onto a cloth, and I want to fix this. More water. It's just a damp brush, and I'm going to just soften it inside the body. There. And now when it dries, I'm going to do that here too, sorry. And the belly is white, but it's going to have this blue shadow anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring some of that up. And then with the damp brush, soften it. Now I want to, I don't want this to be completely, totally smooth like it is. So I'm going to take some of the pigment and wiggle it around in the background. It's going to be smaller in the background than it is in the foreground. And now we have a little bit of texture, and this is where I'm going to get the salt. Sorry, I forgot to mention salt. I'd never remember that I want to use it. And I'm going to put a little bit of salt just around, mostly towards the bottom, and a little bit here, not a ton. And see what's happening here? This is from when the paper was drying, and I took some of the wet pigment and I put it in here on the liquid that was coming off my brush. Had thinner consistency than what's on the paper, and it's pushing pigment away, and it's called a cauliflower. All right, here's a cauliflower here that I'm going to try to get rid of. If you feel like your salt's not working, like it's not making any headway, I'm going to just tap on a little bit of water to get some texture. This is like my backup texture. Now I'm going to let it dry naturally and not dry it until I know that salt is done doing its job. It's all dry, and I just love all the texture that we got in the foreground. Now we're going to make a gray, and we're going to start off with orange again. This was more of a purpley blue gray. We're going to make a gray that's dark for the penguin's body. So I'm using more pigment and way less water. I'm really just using enough water to get it to move, and I'm getting all that pigment out as much as I can before I rinse my brush out. Now I'll add the blue, and I'm going to add a lot. For phthalo blue, I'm going to add a lot. And that just turned it that perfect color of dark gray. Okay, now I'm going to rinse. And I noticed that on this penguin there's a little bit of brown. So I'm going to turn this brown, I think. I'm going to try. A little red. More yellow. I think maybe a little more yellow. And now more red. I just sort of want a light brown, which is what we've got here, and I want to add that right here to the penguin as sort of an underpainting. And try to keep that white part out of it. More water on my brush. This does not have to look amazing. All watercolors have an ugly stage. Okay, the wing also has a little brown in it. I'm not going to worry too much about the face. We'll just do it with gray. Right back here on this tail. If you look at your reference photo, like really study it, you'll be able to see these subtle differences easier and easier each time. It's all dry. Now I'm going to wet all of the brown. I switched to the number 4 Princeton Heritage so I can have a little more control. I want to put a fair amount of water on here so that it doesn't dry on me. I want to be able to put in the pigment and let it spread. Looks like I went over the white part of the wing there with the white, with the brown, I mean. Okay. I have a puddle here, so I'm just going to move it to this side of the penguin. Okay, now I'll get some of the gray and go right over the brown. Let's get the rest of it filled in and then we'll do the details. So there's a lot of water right there. So we'll move that around. I'm going to do this. All right, now I'm going to deepen the value. I'm going to get some more pigment and add it down here. What did I do here? This goes like that. Doesn't that look pretty with the brown underneath? I just love this. All right, now I'm going to be careful around the eye thing, this eye part. This number 4 is actually pretty thin, nice sharp tip. I bought these a long time ago and I just never use them, and I thought this would be the perfect project to use them on. So if you're a beginner and you don't really know where to start or what to do, you won't be sad with these brushes. They're nice. And they're affordable. Okay, see now how we didn't put any brown on the head? And it just doesn't look quite the same as that, does it? I'm going to put a little brown right here. Okay, now the black goes kind of over. We need to straighten this line up. It goes over the top of the beak. Okay, now let's do the tail. And since we have the blue underpainting, we can just sort of swoop some feathers. That's white, and then there's a little bit of white, and then these are coming out like this. Do a little bit darker, get a little more pigment on my brush. And then these kind of get less pigment, and I'm going to tick these out. More pigment. It's all dry, and now while it is cooling, I'm going to mix an orange. I got a little bit of the Red Rose Deep and then a little bit too much yellow, so I'm going to add a little more red, pink into that. I want a nice bright orange, and I'm going to add it to the beak. If you have too much liquid on your brush, just go like this on whatever it is you're using. I think actually that needs a little bit of yellow. So with the damp brush, I'm going to take some of this off as it just sucks it right up. And then I'm going to add just yellow. And I'm noticing that there's a little white tip on the beak. We'll just add that later. Now I'm going to do the feet. And before I do that, I'm going to add a little more yellow to this mix. Okay, now I'm going to just do both feet the same color. And I'm going to come back around to finish them off. I'm going to add more gray to the penguin's body. I'm going to work on wet paper. So I'm wetting the penguin's body. Get some more of the paint, and I want to make this part of its body darker, so I'm adding more paint there. This is going to help give it a little contour. A little bit more on the head. It's darker on the head. Damp brush, some brown. Oh, that was a lot. All right, try that again. A little bit more gray. I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to come down, and it's dark down here, sort of the cheek and behind the eye. Looks like it's drying off on me right here. Now I'm going to just spread this out and make it soft. And now its wing has a little bit more value here than it does here. I'm just going to soften that. I'm going to add actually a little bit more out here. I'm going to take my 0 and do the feet. I think I need to get a little bit more pigment. This gray didn't last very long. Some blue, some red, some yellow. Okay, that needs a little more yellow. I got too much. Turned it green, so I'm going to go for red. Because red and green are kind of, not opposite, but across from each other on the color wheel. All right, that's pretty good. Actually add a little more blue. There we go. And now, right under the feet, I see, right in here, their toe is stubby. And then right under, it's got some shadow. I'm going to add a soft shadow here to outline, to sort of define the penguin's body a little bit. And then with a soft brush, soft damp brush, I'm spreading it out so I don't have a hard line. Okay, and then let's get some of this dried pigment. My brush is not wet, it's just damp, and I just picked up the dry pigment, and I'm going to do this little line right here. And I'm going to do that again on the beak. So I'm just going from here, barely touching the paper and coming out. Now we need to define the penguin's belly and separate it from the ground. So I'm just wetting underneath, and I'm going to add some of this. The head is lifted up off the ground, so I'm not putting the shadow under the head. Isn't that pretty? I love glazing. It's dry and my paper is pretty cooled off. I'm going to wet the whole foreground and midground. And I'm going to get out the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleedproof White, which comes in a little jar, and that little jar lasts forever. And I'm going to use it in the wet, on the wet paper, to show just some more white. Okay, so I have it all ready. I like to mix it up in my lid, and I didn't want to just rinse all of that off my brush, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to add just a little snow. Up onto the penguin and below the penguin. And then over all of this, just to make the eye go over looking at that. And then I'm going to cover this, and I'm going to splat it in this wet part. Come on, work. There we go. This paper doesn't like to stay wet. And then I'm going to use I'm going to water it down a little bit more And I'm going to make some boulders back here, like icebergs or something. Or maybe they're frozen trees. I don't know. It's very icy and cold here.
Uh-huh.
iPad is talking to me. Did you hear that? Okay, now I can do it's dry, and the last thing I want to do is put the little thing of white right there on the beak. And I noticed that I did this eye wrong, so I'm going to fix it. I'm going to use some white to go over. It's still wrong. That didn't go well. I'm going to put some black back on there. If I can get some black. This is what not to do. So I'm going to fix the eye. I'm going to get some thicker paint. And I'm going to turn it into like a diamond shape, but oblong this way. If I turn it, I can probably do it better. Well, it needs to be a little bit bigger. Okay, it is the next day, and I'm thinking this needs a little bit more work. It needs to be a little happier, I think, and it needs to be a little darker. So what I'm going to do is, I know I took it off the block, that's okay. I'm going to make the penguin a little bit darker overall, and I'm going to give him a little party hat, like he's sliding into 2026. Isn't that going to be cute? So right on dry paper, I mixed, before I turned on the camera, I mixed a little bit more dark. It's leaning a little purple, and it was one of those times when you're mixing that you just can't get it to turn. I just couldn't get it to turn dark black. So purple it is. And I think that looks better rounded rather than bumpy. This is a number 8 and it's pretty pointy. All right, now let's make a little hat. It's gonna be so cute. I'm gonna do a little bit of yellow. Just gonna do a little triangle. A little orange. Let's do a little red. A little bit more color. Let's do some little stripes too. A little bit of blue. And I like the little floof, how it is. Cut it out. I'm gonna cut out these little bitty little triangles. I'm gonna get a little piece of double-sided tape. And then lastly, a little bit of white splatter. more. Now it's got a little bit more energy, a little bit more liveliness to it. I think I will also put a couple little birds in the distance. Take some of the gray from here, and way out here, just some little shapes, little V shapes or little upside down V shapes. Here's a body. Birds just flying around. And we're all done. I hope that you enjoyed our first penguin of the month as much as I did. Remember, it's always okay to go back to your painting after you think you're done and add a little bit more to it or take a little bit away. I really like what we added. I think that it's very fitting for January 1st. So with that, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.